Well, hello again, everybody. Thank you for joining us here, Sierra Adventure Church, church without, and yet with so much. We're going to pick it up today in 1 Peter. We're just marching through the book of 1 Peter, and I promised the ladies last time that we would be snapping the towel on the guys this time. We're not going to get there today. I really hope to get much further than we're going to get, but it's coming. We're going to talk about the guys. We're going to finish talking about what Peter has to say toward wives, toward the ladies. And last time we dealt with a very difficult scripture, one that's manipulated, one that's taken out of context, one that's sometimes used against women, where it says, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands. And a lot of times we just stop there. Right? We don't go on and see the context. We took a look at what's actually going on. We took at the context, at who this was written to, at the time it was written in, and Peter goes on and says more beyond wives submit to your own husbands. He goes on, he's got more to say there. Why Peter said this is, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so if a husband doesn't believe, he might be won over by the simple way that his wife lives. That she would be such an impact on him that if he doesn't believe, that it would bring him around, okay? And we talked about how, back then, wives didn't have the rights that they do now, and it was a weird thing for a wife to be able to choose her own faith, to choose a faith apart from whatever her husband was or wasn't. And yet this was happening, so it had to be addressed. So he's like, just hang in and live a good life. You might bring that guy around. I know he's a hard-headed, whatever, but you might bring him around. And we talked about living a life of integrity, which is wholeness, it's integration. Purity and integrity, kind of synonyms for the same concept. So you have this integration where who you project is the same as who you are, that you're the same person all throughout. You're a fully integrated person, spiritually and whatever image you project out toward people. And that a husband could be won over without words. You don't even have to argue. Wives like to argue us into things sometimes.
What?
Huh?
That was rude.
Was it?
Yes.
Okay. It was rude. But sometimes you like to reason with us. We like to argue. Husbands do it with their wives too. We like to throw down our reasoning and this is what we're going to do and this is why. And he says, when it comes to Jesus, just live your life. And by living your life, then you might bring that other person around. You might bring that husband around to seeing things the Jesus way. And again, we looked at the historical context this was written into. And we looked at what biblical submission is and isn't. And for a husband to come up and go, woman, you must submit to me, it's just going to get you in trouble. And that's not at all what it's saying. It's that Greek word hupotasso, which is arranging yourself under somebody else intentionally, voluntarily putting yourself in service to somebody else. And marriages work best when we do those both sides, right? When we're both coming at it in that way. And we looked at the Jesus example. How Jesus submitted voluntarily even to the cross on our behalf. And so voluntary and loving is what the biblical model of submission looks like. So we're going to pick it up today, 1 Peter chapter 3. And we're just going to go back and read those first couple verses so we can get a flow. So we'll just take it from verse 1, what we covered last week, just so we can flow into what we're doing today. Wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives. When they see the purity and reverence of your lives, your beauty, he goes on today, should not come from outward adornments such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. So he carries that on. There's a flow from the purity, the integrity, the integration of the spiritual life and image and everything you put forth. He moves on to where a woman's beauty should come from. And he starts by saying where it should not come from. And this is kind of a biblical literary style. Jesus does it. If you watch for it, the Bible teaches us a lot by, what are we supposed to do? We're also going to show you what not to do. What is this supposed to be? We'll show you what it's not supposed to be. And it puts those two things side by side. Where should a woman's beauty come from? He starts by telling us it should not come from outward adornment. Outward adornment, things like braided hair. Any braided hair here today? You know, I don't want to have to kick anybody out of the church for braided hair. There's more to that than what it says, more than what you think it says too. You know, again, we're reading somebody else's mail. Hair in Roman culture was a big deal. A woman's hair was prized. It was highly sexualized. You know, they didn't have Botox and plastic surgeons, but you know, the hair was a big deal. And for modest women, you'd see them in Rome, and you see statues of a woman with a covering over her hair. That's what you did if you were modest, right? So you got that. And then for the women who were putting it all out there, they got their hair did. They got it big. They did it big and huge, and they braided things like gold thread and jewels into these braids. They would just, you know, updo. And so you had this huge hair with all this opulence in it. And he's like, that's not where your beauty should come from. They also, I found out that the Roman women liked wigs. That they loved the blonde hair from the Germanic people. And they loved the really, really dark hair from the people to the east. So it's like every place they conquered, they would, you know, then make wigs out of the hair of the people that they conquered and wear them. So that's just kind of messed up, isn't it? It's like, you know, my hair is actually kind of a brown color, but I'm going to put on this blonde wig and I'm going to put this out there. And, you know, it's not at all what it really is, but I'm going to wear the hair of the people that my people conquered. That's kind of messed up. So hair, a big deal to the Roman women. So not with braided hair. That's not where a woman's beauty should come from. And we've got lots of equivalents today. We'll talk, you know, this kind of makes sense as we look at it, and it's not all that different today. Gold jewelry, you know, and gold was about the most prized, indestructible thing, imperishable thing that they had, and they'd like to put that on and show how wealthy and opulent they were, how high class. You got the gold jewelry, you got the fine clothes. Fine clothes. We love our fine clothes still. Things that signal a station in a society and a certain income level. Really not all that different from what we are today, is it? Right? All you got to do is open up Cosmopolitan or Elle magazine and flip through the ads, and everybody's trying to sell you something all the time. They're trying to sell you something to make you look better, to make you look more appealing, to make you look younger, to put this image out there, to make you more attractive. They're trying to sell you stuff. TV commercials. I think the best thing we ever did was give up network TV. We don't have broadcast TV anymore. So we see commercials, and some of them, you know, we laugh, and they're like, people, my dad is like, you never seen that before? I was like, no, we don't have TV. You know, we don't get to see these. And then some commercials, it's like, wow, that's really dumb. I don't believe that, you know, that they think we're that dumb that we would buy this by the way they're selling it. I love those luxury car commercials at Christmas, right? Where there's like a big Mercedes out in the yard with a big red bow on it. You know, and it's like, if you're not doing this, if you're not giving a Mercedes with a big red bow, well, you're just not doing Christmas right, you know. They're always trying to sell you something, trying to coerce you into buying what they're selling. And, you know, it's no wonder that there's an abundance of cheap knockoffs of expensive things. Like, what are those, like, really expensive purses? Coach, yeah. That's one I was trying to think of. You know, and you get these, you know, these expensive looking knockoffs. They're not the real thing, but if you have it, it looks enough like it that people might think it's actually one. And they're going to think that of you. Oh, look at that expensive purse, you know, Prada shoes. And we do it with hiking gear too. You know, you don't have to spend a lot on hiking gear to get the job done, but get people out on the trail with, you know, it's all Patagonia and North Face, and, you know, you get these certain brands, it's like, ooh, yeah, you're a good hiker, you know, you're a real hiker. And you don't need all that, you know, sometimes you can go much cheaper. It's good stuff, but sometimes you can go cheaper and get the same job done. You're just going to get it grubby and dirty anyway when you're out hiking. So remember that the women that this was written to originally were in other cultures. They weren't from where they were living. They had scattered out from where they used to live and ended up in kind of these foreign places. So there might have been a pressure to kind of fit in these foreign cultures. And, you know, if they could roll up And it's all still ruled by Rome. And if they could roll up and kind of do the outward thing to fit in and be okay, if they could roll in looking like, maybe more Roman than Jew, look more like the conqueror than the oppressed, that might be good for their station in these new places. And, maybe emulating the culture of the Roman occupiers. And Peter says that is not where a wife's beauty comes from. That's not where a woman's beauty comes from. Now, if you have a King James or New King James, there's in italics, merely written in there. So it says your beauty should not merely come from outward adornment. When you see something in italics, it means it was put in by the translators after the fact. And I kind of like this, merely, because it's not like, if you try. If you get dressed up and you try to look nice, that there's something wrong, that you're doing it wrong. It's okay to try. Hygiene is not just a greeting, right? It's not, hi, Gene. No, there's more to hygiene. It's not just a greeting. It's okay to try. It's okay to bathe. It's okay to put on deodorant. It's okay to brush your teeth. It is okay to try, but that's not merely where your beauty comes from. My family had a saying when I was growing up. They said, beauty is only skin deep, but ugly goes all the way down. That's probably kind of messed up, but yeah, that was something we would say in my household when I was young. It's about purity again and integrity. Whatever image you're putting out, if it's not who you are, then maybe you ought to step back and take a look at that. If you're trying to look opulent, and be something you're not inside, maybe take a look at that. Don't let your appearance be what defines you, because people will be let down once they find out who you really are. If you put out this really cool, opulent exterior, and then they find out that you're just a person inside, they might be kind of put off by that. That's not integrity. We're looking for integration of the entire person. I remember a buddy of mine years and years ago, I think I was 18 or 19 years old, a friend of mine went to look at a car, and it was a Puma. Everybody ever heard of a Puma? And I'm like, oh man, I don't know what this is. So I went with him to take a look at it, and those were kind of blowing away there.
Oh, sorry.
So I went with him to take a look at it, and man, it looked like this little baby Ferrari. It was the coolest looking car. Like, a little smaller, but had that same little curvy, sharp nose, pop-up headlights, little, spoiler tail. It looked so cool, like a Ferrari and a Corvette got together and had a little baby. It was, it looked so cool. And then he started it up, and it sounded like a Volkswagen. And that's all it was. It was a fancy Ferrari, baby Ferrari body put on a Volkswagen. I was so let down. He starts it up. I'm like, oh no, you kidding me? Sounds like a Volkswagen. Well, that's it's on a Volkswagen platform. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a letdown. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a Volkswagen. All right, I've been around a lot of Volkswagens. I've driven them. They're incredible fun, but it's a Volkswagen. Don't make it pretend to be something it's not. There's an integrity, a purity, an integration of the Volkswagen just for what it is. Brilliant design for as old as it is. And, they're a lot of fun, but you don't have to pretend, put something on it to make it look like a little Ferrari to make it fun and cool. We should not do that with ourselves either. Ladies, don't do that with yourselves. You don't need to. And us men in our, 21st century metro culture, we can be just as guilty of that, trying to put on the exterior. Rather, Peter says, it should be the beauty of your inner self. In the Greek, this is kryptos anthropos, which means hidden human, right? It should come from within. A beauty that emanates from within where people can't directly see, but they see what comes out. They see what emanates out from that hidden place. And that's the beauty of spirituality, right? It's the inside, and once that changes, it all kind of flows outward. Kind of like an earthquake. It's rare that you get to see where an earthquake happens. There's a place down south by Lone Pine where there's a big old scarp, you can see where it happened. Usually it happens underground though. And the earth moves, and then the way it moves is the shock waves that go out. And a woman's beauty, our spirituality should be that same thing. It's coming from someplace deep within that's hidden, and it emanates and sends these shock waves out that are the evidence that is going on. real beauty will shine through even when you're on a through hike. I love that. When we went out and did the John Muir Trail, and I talk about that a lot because that was a real pivotal thing for the formation and the vision of this church. It's where we got the vision to do something like this outside. And we're out there, and I'll tell you, my wife, she looks great when she's dressed up to go out on the town. She looks lovely this morning. And she was equally as beautiful to me when she was sweaty and caked with dust on the trail. You walk along and you get this cakey, dusty stuff that sticks to the sweat on your legs, and you just get all grubby and brown. And I tell her she doesn't get sweaty, she gets glowy out there. She was beautiful out there to me, just as beautiful because, I walk behind her because I like the view. Did that come out? Was that my outside voice? Anyway, walked behind her the whole time, and she set the pace, and I was just trying to keep up with her, is part of the truth of it. And, her out there carrying that big old pack, just rocking it on the trail, it was beautiful to me. So that kind of beauty can be there whether you're cleaning house, whether you're, out on a run and your hair's all, sweaty and sticking to you. That kind of beauty can be there whether you're going out on the town or down in the trenches doing something sweaty, something glowy, right? Unfading. This is the unfading beauty, the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. And imperishable, he's bringing back that whole notion that, when he was talking about our inheritance at the beginning, he's going back and he's kind of grabbing onto some of that verbiage. Our inheritance is imperishable. It doesn't decay. It doesn't wear out. It doesn't fade. It doesn't go away. This is the kind of beauty that is also unfading, imperishable, the gentle and quiet spirit, not subject to decline. It's a short ride. There was a time when, I was built pretty good, and those times are short. That kind of goes by, and you can fight and resist the effects of age, but it's gonna catch up with you. It's just how it goes. And this kind of beauty is imperishable, unfading, not subject to decline. As the flower of youth fades, this inner beauty can and it should continue to grow. Turns young ladies into matriarchs, right? Anybody have that one lady in their family, that one grandma that was just cool and has been through some stuff, seen some things, and just had a quiet knowledge about her? And if you could go to her and you could ask her things, and she had enough experience that she could have a good answer for you, and impart that wisdom. This is the kind of beauty that turns young ladies into matriarchs. I had a great grandma who made it to just shy of her 104th birthday. And she came from Oklahoma, and man, would love to tell the story of the trip from Oklahoma to California. And they would run out of gas, they run out of money, and they just pull in and they would, harvest food and cotton to get enough money to put gas in the car to keep going. The car would break, they would do work, they would fix the car, they would keep going. They came out here and they lived in a house with a dirt floor. And man, to listen to her kids talk about it, she would keep that dirt floor clean. She'd sweep her dirt floor, and that dirt floor was actually somehow clean. This lady had seen some things, and when you walk through some situations, you walk through some fires, and you walk through hard things, and you come out the other side, you have something to give. And this is that part of that inner beauty that turns young women into those older grandmotherly matriarchs. And there's a beauty there that is imperishable. He talks about a gentle and quiet spirit. He doesn't talk about a gentle and quiet mouth. Those can be two different things. It's not like women are more attractive when they're being quiet. All right, women have things to say, and we as men will listen to women when they have things to say, because a lot of times they're right. All right. So in spirit, they're gentle. It means meekness and graciousness, not harsh, not judgy, not mean, and quiet, which in the Greek means undisturbed and tranquil. It's a compound word in Greek meaning to keep one's seat. So it means you're not easily put off balance, not easily rattled. You're seated, you're stable, and it's hard to dislodge a person from that quiet, gentle and quiet spirit. Verse 5, for this is the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to adorn themselves. They submitted themselves to their own husbands, like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham and called him her Lord. You are her daughters if you do what is right and do not give way to fear. I so wanted to get into verse 7 today and talk about the guys, but it's going to happen next week, okay? The adornment of the old school holy ladies, it's the same thing. This kind of adornment, this kind of inner beauty is universally attractive through the ages. It always has been, it always will be. We need those wise older women around us to pour into us and sometimes set us straight. We need them to pray for us. We need them to impart that wisdom to us. Universally attractive across the ages. Now Peter points back to Sarah as an example. A specific example of this inner beauty. It's interesting that Peter would bring Sarah up as an example, because Abraham and Sarah were not perfect, right? We know the song, Father Abraham had many sons had Father Abraham, but he was not perfect. They did not do things perfectly. They had their troubles. They had their rough spots in their relationship with each other, in their relationship with God. Now, God had promised Abraham, he says, out of you I will make a nation. There are going to be so many people coming from you and Sarah. And at this point, they were both older. They were both kind of, it's kind of ludicrous to consider that possibility, that they would have kids like well past their prime and well past the childbearing and child-rearing age. And yet God promised that. So they tried to help God out. They tried a lot to help God out. There was the one incident where there was a famine. Abraham and Sarah, she was younger, and apparently she was really something to look at back in the old days. They went into Egypt, and he's like, my wife is hot. They're going to kill me, and they're going to take her from me. I better, make something up, make up some kind of false backstory. We'll tell the Egypt people that she's my sister. Right? And God didn't tell him to do that. All they had to do was go. All they had to do was trust God. But here Abraham's trying to help God out. And sometimes when we try and help God out, it doesn't go like we plan, like we would like it to. As beautiful as Sarah was in her early years, God waited until that external beauty had faded away to fulfill his promise to her and Abraham, so there would be no doubt where this was coming from. She was too old to have children. And so she helped God out by giving her maidservant to Abraham to have a child. Think about that for a minute. If you think you got trouble in your marriage, at least we're not, hopefully giving other people to our spouse so that, we can help God out in his plan and his promise. They both had tried manipulating the natural to assist in the supernatural. And they didn't have to do that. They had to step out in faith. The time is coming if you haven't been there yet, and a lot of us has been through stuff like this, where there's a time that God's leading you to something and you have to step out in faith. But sometimes as we try and step out, we get a little ahead and we step on. Instead of stepping out in faith, we step on our faith. So neither Abraham or Sarah was perfect, but God worked with them and he fulfilled his promise. I want to look at verse 6 again real quick. Like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham and called him her Lord. You are her daughters if you do what is right, do not give way to fear. The only time Sarah ever called Abraham Lord, and you can go back and you can check this out, is in Genesis 18. In Genesis 18, 11, and 12, Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I am worn out, and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure? The only time she ever called him Lord out loud was kind of an out loud sarcastic conversation with herself that God happened to be listening in on. What had happened is they were out there and Abraham's having this encounter with God, and all of a sudden these three mystery guests show up. And he freaks out because your hospitality, people judged you on your hospitality, and they weren't ready. They weren't expecting anybody, and now there are these 3 guests. And he went in and he asked her, he told her, he ordered her, not very nicely, get some of that good flour and make some bread. And it wasn't real nice. And this, when she calls him Lord with her own lips, happened right after that. She went ahead, she made the bread, they fed the guys. And one of the guys says, when we come back here next year, Sarah's going to have a baby. And she's off somewhere listening. It's like, whatever. Wait till I'm all old and wore out, and now I'm going to have this pleasure. She's having that sarcastic, jaded conversation with herself. Interesting that Peter would take this situation and point to that as something to follow. And I'm glad he did. I'm glad he didn't, that the failures weren't written out of this history. The failures are very much there. They're part of the story. When they step out, they go too far, they step on, they're trying to help God. And even though they kind of messed everything up, God came through in that promise for them. You are her daughters, it says, if you do what is right and don't give way to fear. So again, for the first readers of this letter, the women, the wives, were in strange lands. They were not at home. They were in strange and foreign lands. They were being encouraged to not try so hard, maybe to fit in. Okay, we are all just pilgrims on this rock, no matter where we are. And they were just pilgrims passing through where they were. It wasn't home, it was uncomfortable. But don't try so hard to fit in where you are. Don't try so much to conform and fit into it. Instead, he was asking them to see it through with their husbands and let that inner beauty show. Stay by him, see it through, all right? Submit voluntarily, do that voluntary service to him. Men, all we need to know is we're okay sometimes. And when my wife comes along and says something nice to me, there's nothing that feels better than that. When she comes along, it's like, you're okay. I know you're struggling here, but you're all right. We're all right, So see it through with those husbands and let that inner beauty show. God is doing something, whether we step into or step on to his will. It can be scary when God starts moving. And he rarely operates in our comfort zones. It's like, I'm calling you to do this, and you're going to be like so comfortable and at ease there. No, he's usually like, we're kind of digging in our heels, and he's pushing this out there. He's like, it's going to be okay. I know you're not comfortable with this, but it's going to be okay. Get out there and do it. Sarah stayed with Abraham, and she saw it through. In fact, Abraham and Sarah stayed together, and they saw it through. So, ladies, wives, seek to become that matriarch type. Young women should have their eye on that. Okay, because, young, beautiful women, that beauty, it doesn't last forever. And then you should be working on that beauty that continues on after that external beauty starts to fade, after we start to age. Start working on that internal beauty, that integrity. Seek to become that matriarch type with that unshakable wisdom that people are going to want to go to and receive from. As an overview of next week, when we do snap the towel on the husbands, all right, it's coming. We're going to do it. Husbands should help their wives to bloom. They should create a safe environment for that inner beauty to thrive and to show. That's part of our job. We need to help them to bloom. The marriage relationship needs to be a safe place. And for a guy who's dating women, for a guy who wants to date women, for you should, all the way back at those, when you're dating and checking girls out, you're hanging out together, you should have in your mind how you're going to help that woman to bloom in that internal imperishable beauty. The marriage relationship needs to be a safe place. I found a couple pictures this morning I think I'm going to put up on Facebook. Pompeii, right? Have you ever seen those pictures from Pompeii, Mount Vesuvius? Not long after this was written, actually, Mount Vesuvius blew, and there was this what they call a pyroclastic flow, a nuée ardente. And And they told me that all of this environmental and geological education would never go anywhere. I'd never be able to use it. Here we are today, the new Ardent. You have this volcano that blows, and this wind and this debris field comes blowing down the hill up to 400 miles an hour. 1,300 degrees. It's just glowing, hot cloud of stuff coming your way. And the pictures, I'm going to put them up. There are pictures of married couples, and all that's left is the skeletons, right? They got in, and it incinerated all the flesh almost immediately. And so you have these little hollowed out places where they could put plaster in, and they get these molds of the skeletons of husband and wife embraced. One of them, their hand is like right up here on the face of the other. I love that. So I think, the message here is that the world can be burning down around us as married people, but wives have that inner beauty, husbands cause her to bloom in that inner beauty, and then you can turn toward each other even when things are crazy, even when you're going through things you never dreamed of, things you never wanted to go through. And we got this thing where I do this. I look at my wife, I'm like, and that means I got you, right? I see you. I got you. And we're turning toward each other. No matter what is raging around us, we got this little eye of a hurricane right here. Whatever's going on around us could take us down, could take us out. It might be our last stand. And we got this. In our little world right here, we're good, right? We're in that safe place. So, husbands, I just want to encourage you with that before we snap the towel next week. So, and this all made me think, this gentle, quiet spirit, this inner beauty, this unfading beauty, of the words of that great theologian, Jack Nicholson. And As Good as It Gets, when he's like, you make me want to be a better man. Right? Remember that? And I think I've actually said that out loud before. You make me want to be a better man. And so ladies, seek to be that. Men, nurture that, grow that. And men, as we kind of bend into each other and serve each other in this way, good things can happen. So we're just going to leave it there today. Come back next week, snap the towel on the men. Lord, we thank you for the day. We thank you for your word, and I hope that this has been a source of encouragement to women, to wives. And as we're kind of addressing that right now. We're just going through verse by verse, and this is what Peter has to say. And I think there's a lot in common. The external beauty that is strived for, that is sold to us, that is tried to be thrust on us, and Lord, help us to back away and consider where beauty comes from. Let there be an integration of beauty from the spiritual inside emanating to the outside. Let us not be defined on what we drive and what we wear and how we look. Those are okay things, but Lord, let us not be defined on that. We just thank you that we're able to take a look at that today. I pray that the ladies here are encouraged. Pray that the men are encouraged, that we will step up, that we will help the women in our lives to bloom in that way, to bring out, to evoke that inner beauty. And Lord, as we go today, we just pray that these words would rattle in our hearts and in our minds, that you would prepare our hearts for what comes next week when we talk about the men, and then we go on to have a much bigger blanket statement about serving and what exactly that looks like. And Lord, thank you for every person that is here. And we thank you for being here with us. We thank you for fellowshipping with us. We give you thanks and glory for your grace that makes it possible for us to be here with you today. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.